Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Russ LeBlanc, your personal NEC consultant and code expert. In this video, we're going to be discussing installation instructions and listing and certification. So if you would like to grab your code book, grab your 2023. We're going to dive right into section 110.3b. Okay. Here's what that section says. As far as installation and use, equipment that is listed, labeled, or both. It could be listed but not labeled, or it could be listed and labeled. Doesn't matter. Listed, labeled, or both, or identified, right? So it might not be lab tested. Right? If it's not lab tested, then it's not listed, but it might be identified or made specifically to do a certain function. In any case, if it's listed, labeled, or both, or identified for use, that equipment shall be installed and used in accordance with any instructions included in that listing, labeling, or identification. Now it's both, right? The equipment has to be installed and then used in accordance with those instructions. You can't install it correctly but not use it correctly. It's both. And there's an important informational note that gives us a heads up that this information, these instructions, might be here, they might be there, they might be all over the place. So we kind of have to do our due diligence and, as an installer, and find this information, right? It might not be right there on the product that you're installing. You may have to do a little research, for example. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but that's what we have to do. That's our responsibility as installers. Informational note, the installation and use instructions may be provided in the form of printed material, right? So there's a sheet of paper that comes with a GFCI receptacle, for example. I'll show you that in the next slide. Or it could be a QR code, right? And I'll show you that quick response code. Or it might just be a manufacturer's website where you could then just download the instructions, right? So all over the place. Piece of paper, could be a QR code you scan, or there's a website you need to go to. So, for example, I bought these audible GFCI receptacles to install on my sump pump in the basement. This way, if it trips, the alarm will sound and I'll know that the power is out, right? Because a lot of people are concerned about that. If the power goes out, the sump pump's going to lose power, the basement's going to flood. In any case, there's a whole sheet of instructions that come with this audible GFCI. I happen to have them right here. And let's take a look at these instructions. Well, we're supposed to follow these instructions. Take a look, and I'm sure you've installed GFCI receptacles before, right? See if I can get that on the screen there. Installing and testing a GFCI receptacle with an audible alarm. And there's like 8 different steps that we're supposed to follow. We're not supposed to just take these and throw them away, right? That's not instruction 1. Instruction 1 is not take instructions and throw them away. A lot of people will do that. In any case, we're supposed to follow the instructions, right? And if you look on the screen, some of the instructions are up there. And one of the things, it might be a little hard to see, but just above that receptacle plate where it says troubleshooting, and just above that, I think it's item D. It says press, this is as far as the use goes, press the test button and then reset every month to assure proper operation, etc., etc. Right? That's how we're supposed to use the GFCI. Every month we're supposed to test that. So hopefully you're testing your GFCIs. Okay, let's take a look at some other stuff now, all right? So this is the terminal for a circuit breaker, right? There's a little label there where it says UL and CSA and a bunch of other information. All right, and some manufacturer information. So can we put 3 wires under this terminal? No, we can't put 3, but we can put 2. According to that label, it says we can have 1 or 2 10 gauge, 12 gauge, or 14 gauge copper wires. Not aluminum. It doesn't say we can use aluminum there, but it does say copper. And we can also use 60 degrees C or 75 degrees C. And again, that's according to that label, right? Let's take a look at another label. This is a label on This is a refrigerator or a freezer. All kinds of information there, right? You'll see the listing marks from NSF and UL, and then you'll also see the minimum circuit ampacity and maximum overcurrent protection devices, 15 amps, right? Whole bunch of information there. And then at the top right, you'll see that QR code. If you need more information, right, it says you can scan that QR code for service information, for example. So if you had a smartphone, you can scan that and it would take you to the manufacturer's website for more information. Let's take a look at the container for some wire connectors. All right, this is this one side of this container full of these red wire connectors, and we're supposed to follow those instructions, right? The instructions aren't necessarily on the wire connector itself, right? There's no room to print all that information, right? Right? Where would you fit it? You can't. And so sometimes the instructions are on the packaging, right? With the GFCI, it was a sheet of paper. With the circuit breaker, there was a label. With these wire connectors, there's packaging that has this set of information about how to install and use these wire connectors, right? And so we're supposed to follow those 6 steps there, right? Turn off the power, strip the wires, straighten wires, align frayed strands, et cetera, right? It says copper to copper only. It says also dry locations only, right? So all that information is needed so that we can install and use these wire connectors properly. If I flip the container around, there's even more information. All right, this is the other side of that container there. And this is a list of, not every single wire combination, but lots of different wire combinations and sizes, right? Can I splice, 12s and 14s and 10s and 8s, right? This list tells us which wires can be spliced inside this wire connector. But it's not a complete list, believe it or not. As big as that list is there, that's not a complete list. In fact, if you look close, it says, consult Ideal for a complete list of all your listed wire combinations. So maybe you want to splice a certain combination of wires and it's not specified on the carton. You could probably go to Ideal's website and look it up and see if your combination is on an expanded list, right? And then they also provide their website right down the bottom there, right? So the information on how to find the information is on the packaging. This is what we have to do as installers. Find the information. It's not always right on the piece of equipment. Let's take a look at an electric baseboard heater installation. Okay, now, Article 424 covers fixed electric space heating equipment like that electric baseboard heater you see underneath the air conditioning unit and underneath that receptacle. Now, if you were to look in that article, 424, no mention about a baseboard heater being installed beneath a receptacle. And if you looked in Article 210 or Article 406 for receptacles, you're not going to find anything that says you can't install a receptacle there. However, if you looked up the instructions or the listing information for electric baseboard heaters, you would find some very important information. So let's take a look at that. All right, and this is from UL's website about its information for electric baseboard heaters. And look at the second paragraph up there. It says, and this is under use and installation, right? To reduce the likelihood of cords contacting the heater should not be located beneath electrical receptacles. Now, remember, that heater has to be installed and used in accordance with the instructions. So, what could happen is this. The original installer installs the heater, right? And there's no air conditioner and there's no receptacle. So, initially, the heater is installed correctly. It's installed according with the instructions, right? There's no receptacle there. And then another installer comes along later and installs that receptacle above that heater. So now, if the heater's used, it's now not being used in accordance with its instructions. It may have been installed originally in accordance with the instructions, but now it's not getting used in accordance with its instructions. So it's both, right? That heater has to be installed and used in accordance with its instructions. Let's take a look at some other equipment now. which wiring methods can I use these connectors for? Now you might think, well, I can use them for NM and MC and AC and, intermix all these, combinations, right? Maybe they're good for all of them, right? And some might be, some might not be. And, there's not a whole lot of room to print information on those connectors or the clamp there. And so maybe it's on the carton, or maybe it's on a sheet of paper that these connectors or fittings are shipped with. So you have to find that information. For example, we'll take a look at one of them. All right, here's the shipping carton for one of those connectors, and it is a listed connector. So what is it rated for? What is it identified for? What is it listed for? Well, right on the carton it says you can use this connector with non-metallic sheath cable, a 14-2, a 12-2, all the way up to 10-3. One cable, one 14-2 all the way up to one 10-3 NM cable. But it also says you can double up. You can have two 14-2s or two 12-2 cables in that particular connector. Now, you might have a connector that looks very similar to that, but it's not listed or identified for the same combinations of cable sizes. So just remember that, right? Just because this connector is made that way doesn't mean another connector is made the same way. Now, what if I decide, well, can I use this connector with UF cable, right? UF cable is non-metallic. It's not a metal cable. Can I use this with UF cable? Doesn't say on the carton that it's okay for UF cable, right? Let's say you run some UF outside, but it comes inside to the panel board, and you want to put a connector in the bottom of the panel board, and this is the connector you want to use. You want to bring the UF into the bottom of the panel board, or a time clock or something, right? Maybe the UF is going to a post light. Can I use this connector with UF? Well, the box doesn't say anything. However, there's UL information or listing information that we could look up, right? It is UL listed, so we could go to their website and find some more information. And so here's what that says. And this is under the product category DWTT for conduit fittings. This is a type of conduit fitting. Believe it or not, that's what it's listed as. It's under that category. And it says connectors designated for use with non-metallic sheath cable are also suitable for use with multi-conductor UF cables in dry locations, right? You can't use this connector outside, but inside, absolutely. You can come into the bottom of the time clock or into the bottom of the panel board and run that UF cable right through that connector, no problem. Let's take a look at another connector, kind of similar to this, but this one I can't use with MC cable or AC cable, but let's take a look at the next one. Now, this cable connector can be used with NM and MC and AC cable. And I also know it can be used with UF, right? Because it's good for NM. The product information for NM cable connectors tells me I can use UF with this connector. Cool, that's good to know. Let's see what else this is good for. You can have one or two NM cables in this connector. And you can also use this for AC cable and MC cable. That's cool. Certain dimensions, right? 14.2 to 10.3, and then including the dimensions that are given there. But can I use this connector with flexible metal conduit? I can use it with metal cables, but can I use it with this particular connector with flexible metal conduit? Doesn't say on the box, so we may have to look that up. Well, here's the listing information for that type of connector, for metal-clad connectors. Right, again, this is from the UL website, the guide info for product category PJOX, which is metal-clad cable connectors. And it says metal-clad cable connectors are, also suitable for use with flexible metal conduit are marked on the device or carton. So, can this connector be used with flexible metal conduit? No, because the carton doesn't say so. Maybe you have a connector that looks just like this one, but it's from a different manufacturer, and it might be listed a little differently. And maybe your connector can be used with flexible metal conduit if the carton says so. So you got to pay attention. And again, you have to find that information. Let's take a look at another connector. All right, it's an angle connector. A whole bunch of information on the carton, but we still might have some other questions. We can use this with steel or aluminum MC, 12.2 to 10.3. It says it's UL listed for steel flexible metal conduit, and it's CSA listed for aluminum flexible metal conduit. Okay, I have a question. Can I use that connector with AC cable, armored cable? Doesn't say. You would think maybe yes, because it's good for MC. Why wouldn't it be good for AC cable too? Well, it might not be. We have to look further, right? Maybe the manufacturer's website has that information, or maybe the UL website has that information. Let's check it out. All right, here's some more information about MC connectors. And it says, this is, again, the listing information. Metal-clad cable connectors, also suitable for use with armored cable, AC cable, are marked on the device or carton. Well, this one isn't. This one is not marked on the carton, suitable for use with AC cable. So no, this one cannot be used with AC cable. Maybe a connector that you're using, it might look just like this one. Maybe that one can be. But this particular one, no, this one cannot be. Let's take a look at another one. All right, here's a duplex connector. And so what wiring methods can this one be used for? Well, it says it can be used for 14.3 to 10.3 non-metallic sheath cables. All right, cool. It also says armored cable. It also says two different types of MC cable, either the smooth or the interlocking sheath MC cable, but not the corrugated tube type, right? That's a third type of MC cable, not the corrugated tube. Smooth or interlocking sheath, but not a corrugated tube type. And this one can also be used with flexible metal conduit. And if you do use it with flexible metal conduit, it says you have to use an anti-short bushing. All right, cool. Can I use this connector with flexible cords? Well, here's some information about connectors that are suitable for use with NM cable, like this one is suitable for use with NM cable. It says, connectors which are also suitable for use with service entrance cable or flexible non-metallic tubing or flexible cord are so indicated on the device or carton. This carton doesn't say, neither does the device, so no. This particular connector cannot be used with flexible cords. Let's take a look at some other stuff. All right, here's a metal box, an outlet box. It says it has X clamps and is suitable for fixture support. Well, what type of cables can I bring into this clamp? Well, it says it's suitable for steel or aluminum armored cable. It's also suitable for 3/8 flexible metal conduit, but not half-inch, apparently, only 3/8. And MC cable. Steel MC cable, but apparently not aluminum MC cable. Okay, pretty specific, right? That's this particular clamp in this particular box. You might have a clamp that's similar, and maybe that one does allow aluminum MC, for example. All right, here's a couple of old work boxes. And the one on the left, and then the one on the right? The yellow arrow, that's the one on the right. That clamp is suitable for certain wiring methods. And then the one on the left, the blue arrow, that clamp is suitable for probably different wiring methods, right? They certainly look different. The clamps are not the same. So we're going to guess that we can't use the same wiring methods for those clamps, right? Let's take a closer look at the clamps themselves. All right. The top one and then the bottom one. Now you can see, especially those bumps, right? If you pay attention to those, the way the bumps are made, the top one, it's kind of got a smooth edge to it, right? So the top one is meant for NM cable, and the bottom one is not. The bottom clamp is suitable for MC cables, probably AC cables, maybe flexible metal conduit. And if you notice that bottom clamp, that metal bump there, that has a kind of a sharp edge. You would not want to tighten that clamp down on an NM cable or a UF cable, because you'd probably, damage that cable jacket and potentially short out the cable or ground it out because it's too sharp of an edge. It needs to be a more rounded or a smooth edge. Now, what I have seen people do in a pinch, they did not have any more clamps like the top one where the yellow arrow is. But they did have clamps, or they stole a clamp out of another box, like the one on the bottom, and they used it with NM. But what they did was they cut it. They cut the clamp down, and they got rid of the parts that kind of make it look like it's not suitable for NM cable, right? Well, you can't do that, right? That clamp is not made for NM cable. Let's take a look at another clamp. And I've actually had to make repairs where people did just that. They used the wrong clamp, they tightened it down on an NM cable, and it ended up shorting out. Not right away, but like 4 or 5 or 6 hours later, and then I had to go fix that because eventually the breaker tripped. So that was a fun service call, or 2 or 3. Don't do that. Use the right clamp. Here's another clamp, right? Now this clamp has a whole bunch of lettering on it, which is going to tell us what this clamp is suitable for if you can find the information, right? Because the other clamps that I showed you, there was no information on those clamps, so we might not know. And if we don't have the shipping carton that the box came in, then again, we might not know what the clamps are suitable for. Well, this clamp has some writing on it. All right, let's open the clamp up and see what it looks like on the inside. That's that clamp there. Now, by looking at it, you can probably guess it's not suitable for NM cable, right? Because if you were to tighten that down on an NM cable, those bumps there, they kind of have a sharp edge. It's going to probably damage the cable. So don't use this with NM cable, right? Those bumps there are going to damage that NM cable. So what do all those marks indicate? Well, again, here's some listing information about clamps in metal outlet boxes. So if a clamp is marked with the letter A, it's suitable for armored cable. If it has an F, that's flexible metal conduit. If it has an N, that's non-metallic sheath cable. If it has a T, that's flexible tubing, like you might see with knob and tube, right? Those flexible tubes, loom, if you will. And it also says clamps suitable for non-metallic sheath cable are also suitable for UF cable, right? In dry locations. Continuing on, if the clamp is suitable for MC cable, there's different types of MC cable. So if it says MCI, that's for the interlock tape type MC cable. And MCIA, that's the interlock tape with an armored ground, right? So it might have like a full-size ground in there. MCS, that's the smooth sheath MC cable. And then MCC is the metal-clad continuous corrugated sheath cable. That's a tongue twister there. Now, you might have a clamp that's suitable for all 7 wiring methods, and it would be marked all. If a clamp it's suitable for all 7 wiring methods, it'll just say all. And generally speaking, clamps have only been tested for securing 1 cable per clamp, unless there's 2 sections, right? Like the clamps I showed you, it was 2 sections. A clamp on one side of a cable, on one side of the screw, and then a cable on the other side of the screw, separate knockouts. Let's take a look at some cable wiring methods. All right, this is AC cable, armored cable. This is healthcare type. It's got the bonding strip, and it also has a green insulated equipment ground as well. That makes it suitable for healthcare facilities. And it's aluminum. It's aluminum armored cable. Now, Article 320 covers uses permitted for AC cable. Let's take a look at what's not permitted, right? This is what the code book says. Use is not permitted, right? There's 5 situations or installations that you can't do with AC cable. Doesn't mention anything about DC circuits, right? Can I use this with DC circuits? Well, 320.12 makes no mention of it. Doesn't say not for use on DC circuits. Well, guess what? If we look at the rest of the information on the tag, this is aluminum AC cable. Now, the product standard, UL4, requires certain markings on the tag for aluminum MC cable. AC cable. Aluminum armored cable. It has to say aluminum armored cable. And again, that's per the product standard. It also has to say, guess what? Not for use on DC circuits. Aluminum AC cable cannot be used with DC circuits. Fire alarm, certain emergency lights, for example, or other controls. Nope, not if it's DC. And it also has to say not to be used with set screw type connectors. You have to use a clamping type connector. And again, this is all per the product standard. You might not have this tag out in the field, right? You might just have the cable and there's no tag because, that was shipped with the original reel and you're down to the last 20 feet of wire or 30 feet of the wire and you're wondering, hey, can I use this piece for DC? Well, on the inside of the cable itself, there's a ribbon. All right, so aluminum AC cable cannot be used on DC circuits. Even on the inside of the cable, there's a little ribbon that says, not for use with DC circuits. Interesting, right? Now, what's even more interesting is this. Aluminum MC cable, perfectly fine for DC circuits. Kind of weird, right? In fact, I contacted UL about this, specifically in regards to UL4, the product standard for aluminum AC cable says it cannot be used for DC circuits. Nobody seems to know why. None of the engineers that I spoke with there know why. This requirement predated everyone there, and nobody had a good explanation why aluminum AC cable cannot be used with DC, but aluminum MC cable, perfectly fine. So, if anyone watching knows why aluminum AC cable cannot be used with DC, please leave a comment. I would love to know why. Kind of weird, right? Apparently it's fine on MC, but not AC, even though the jackets are pretty much identical. Different product standard, though. The product standard for MC cable is UL 1569 versus UL 4, right? If you look closer at the tag, this is MC cable. It doesn't say anything about not for use on DC circuits, right? Nothing. It does say do not use set screw connectors. Okay, fine, because if you use a set screw connector, you'll crush the jacket, but I guess DC is fine. Kind of weird. So I'm hoping somebody can make a comment to enlighten us all on why. And maybe aluminum AC cable would be fine. Maybe it's just an old standard that needs updating. I don't know. I would love to find out, though. Let's take a look at some other equipment. This is a nameplate information for a heat pump. Now, it says maximum breaker size, 15. Well, what if I want to use fuses? Well, then it says maximum fuse size, 28. 28 is not a standard size. 30 is, but you can't go to 30 because it says maximum fuse size, 28. You could put a 25 or a 20. You can go smaller. If it doesn't trip or blow the fuse, you can put a 20 amp fuse there, but you can't put a 20 amp breaker in. You got to pay attention, right? That's what the label says. For a breaker, it's 15 amp max. For a fuse, it's 28. That's how this thing has been tested and listed and labeled. You got to follow those instructions. Now let's take a look at 110.3c. As far as the listing, right, these testing labs, who's going to evaluate these products? Well, the code says product testing, evaluation, and listing, or product certification, shall be performed by a recognized, qualified electrical testing lab and shall be in accordance with applicable product standards, right? Recognized as achieving equivalent and effective safety for equipment installed to comply with this code. Now, the NEC does not say which labs, right? However, there is an informational note that tells us OSHA has a list and they publish it. It's on the screen there, right? If you can go to that website and let's do that. Let's take a look at and see which labs, nationally recognized testing labs, that's what OSHA calls them, nationally recognized testing labs, NRLTs. Let's see what's on their list presently. And this could change, right? Sometimes they add, sometimes they subtract, so you got to check that list. All right, here's some labs, and these are all approved by OSHA. Some you may recognize, some you may not. That's okay, right? And again, some of these you may recognize, some not, but they're all testing labs recognized by OSHA. Here's some more. There's more. I got more coming. There's a couple more pages. These are all testing labs recognized by OSHA, and this is right from their website. And then, of course, this one, UL, probably the most widely known. Now let's take a look at some markings on actual equipment. Here's a piece of equipment. It's a leak detection controller. It's UL listed. There's the mark, the UL mark. It says it's UL listed. Okay. Now here's another piece of equipment. It has the UL mark, but it doesn't say listed. This one says UL certified. So this is an enhanced UL certification mark, and this can be used on equipment that's either listed by UL or classified by UL. And UL started this in 2013, and they're going to apparently transition to this enhanced mark, and it's probably going to happen slowly over time. So you might not see it immediately, but you may start to see products with this enhanced UL mark, and it might say UL certified versus UL listed, and that's fine, right? It's still listed, but UL is saying certified. So you may see some terminology changes in the code as well, because they even now it says certified in 110.3b, and so certified is basically the same thing as listed in this case. Here's another lab, ETL. Now this one is listed by two agencies, two labs. NSF and UL have both listed this. And then the top right, you see that QR code again. And then FM, also pretty big and widely known lab. And then CSA is also very large, widely known. And again, there's a QR code there. And here's a box that's listed by two agencies or labs, UL listed and also CSA listed. Now let's take a look at another mark that you might see. This one says UL classified. Now what does that mean? It doesn't say listed, it doesn't say certified, it says classified, right? It's kind of similar to listed, right? Let's take a look at something else that says classified. This one's for medical electrical equipment, pretty specific piece of equipment. This is a tube of fire stopping, right? And it's like if you're filling in a gap around a raceway or a cable, and you're trying to maintain the fire rating of the wall. UL classified, right? Not UL listed, but UL classified. Even circuit breakers like this, UL classified versus UL listed. Well, what's the difference? Well, when it's classified, UL has determined that the manufacturer has demonstrated the ability to make a product that complies with its requirements for the purposes of that classification or evaluation regarding one or more of the following. It's usually for a specific task, right? For specific risks only, such as casualty, fire, or shock, or specific performance under specified conditions, or compliance with regulatory codes, or compliance with specific standards, or other conditions determined by UL. And all the products that carry this classified mark are also covered by UL's follow-up services to make sure that the manufacturer is still in compliance with UL's requirements. So this is a classified breaker, and I'm going to flip the breaker on its side, and there's a label there that provides all kinds of information on how we can use and install this breaker. So on the side of that breaker, it says this breaker is UL. It's classified, UL classified for use in the UL listed panel boards named below in place of listed circuit breakers, right? So this T&B breaker can be installed in other manufacturers' panel boards. Cool. It's specifically tested for that. So classified means it's tested for basically a specific function, if you will. That's probably the best way I can explain it. And then what's this mark there? That's kind of like this backwards RU or UR. What is that all about? Right, notice that's a component, right? That's a power supply for a bigger piece of equipment. And then here's a fan. And this fan is really, this was part of a VFD, a variable frequency drive for a motor. It's a cooling fan. It's part of a VFD. Right, and again, you see that backwards RU. What is that? Well, that's called a recognized component, right? A UL recognized component. That indicates that a manufacturer has demonstrated the ability to produce a component for use in an end product that complies with UL requirements. Now, the recognized component mark is applicable to components that are incomplete, if you will, or limited in performance capabilities. These components are generally part of a larger product or system, right? Like the power supply I just showed you in the previous slide, that's part of a bigger cabinet, if you will, a control cabinet with that power supply in it. And this fan on the screen there, that's part of a VFD. So it's a recognized component for that VFD, right? Generally, that's what a UL recognized component is. Not the same thing as listing or classified. It's lab tested, but it doesn't really meet the same requirement as satisfied code anyways, as far as listing or labeling. But it is recognized by UL. Now, one thing I want to point out here. I often hear people say, oh, the manufacturer's instructions supersede code or take precedent over code. Wrong. That is absolutely false, not true. They both go hand in hand, right? For example, you might have a piece of equipment and you do calculations per code and you determine that you could run a number 8 conductor, right? But the equipment says, or has instructions that says, install 6 gauge minimum. Okay, then you install 6 gauge minimum, right? That's over and above code. Code would allow 8, manufacturer instructions require 6. Okay, great, then you install 6, right? But that same piece of equipment might also say, do not install on GFCI protected circuit. That does not mean you can omit GFCI protection for a receptacle that piece of equipment is plugged in, if that receptacle is required to have GFCI protection per 210.8, for example. You can't omit GFCI protection on a receptacle. What that means is that piece of equipment can't be plugged into that receptacle. You got to move that piece of equipment. Don't plug it in there. Put it somewhere else where you can put a receptacle in that is not required to have GFCI protection. So, no, they don't. Manufacturer instructions don't supersede the code or allow you to set aside the code requirements. That is not true at all. They both go hand in hand. Manufacturer instructions and the code got to work together, right? They have to work together. Okay, and one more thing I want to talk about here. What's this mark right there? What does that CE mark mean, right? That has nothing to do with a testing lab, right? That is not a safety certification. It does not demonstrate compliance to North American safety standards or any installation code. That CE mark is required on products in European countries that are part of the European Economic Area, the EEA, to facilitate trade between those member countries. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with electrical safety. It's just to allow free trade between those European countries. That's it. It's not CE listed, in other words. Thank you so much for watching. For more information, please visit russellblank.net. I will see you in the next video.